Welcome everyone, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Made Smarter Innovation Digital Supply Chain Hub. Welcome to the Innovator and Research Briefing. My name is Dana Elman. I'm an innovation partner at Digital Catapult, and it is my pleasure to introduce and host today's briefing event. We have the agenda for today is as follows. We will hear first from Tim Lawrence, Digital Supply Chain Hub Director, about the Hub overview. And then we will, I will invite Ben Ramsden, Partnerships Manager, to the stage to speak about to introduce the challenges. After then, we will hear from Jasmine Kailath, Innovation Delivery Manager, to give an overview of the program and how to get involved in the first round of open calls. After the presentations, we will have a Q&A. Without further ado, I'll want to introduce first a quick video for an overview of the Hub before we start with the presentations.
In the industrial world, we've faced an unprecedented number of challenges in the last 2 or 3 years. We are in a world where demand and supply are becoming imbalanced with each other.
Supply chains are becoming a key priority for industry and governments globally.
The old ways of working just do not work. And what we need today is a new collaborative approach where it's not just about optimizing your own business operations, but your entire network.
The Digital Supply Chain Hub is really an environment where we can bring together innovators from manufacturing, from digital technologies, to really see how we can accelerate digital innovations that will deliver sustainable, resilient supply chains in the future.
It's an opportunity, more than anything, bring together disparate partners from across supply chains, whether that's academics, whether it's large industry bodies, whether it's the tech startups or the innovators. It's creating a space for them to really think about how is it that we should be doing supply chains better.
We're entering a very new age in how supply chains could really work, improve efficiency, great value out of supply chains, breed a whole new era of businesses in digital capability.
This is a great event. It's about that shift and translation from academia knowledge, research, cutting-edge thinking, blue sky thinking into practice.
It was fascinating to hear today from so many different sectors, different challenges, but then on the other hand, so many sort of common themes in there.
It's a perfect balance of the right thing happening at the right time.
There's nothing else in the world like what we're doing. We're going to be able to see transformational change, and it heralds the beginning of a new era in the collaboration across supply chains.
And you will hear from some of the team members today to give an overview and presentations. And when you'll have questions, we are here to respond and answer those. And if you have any questions after the webinar, you can see how to reach out to us via the inbox, the email address that is listed here. And I'd like to now introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker is Tim Lawrence. He's the director for the Digital Supply Chain Hub at Digital Catapult, and he will present an overview on the hub. So Tim, over to you. If you can please join us on camera.
Yeah, thanks very much, Dana, and welcome everybody to this briefing. Really excited to get our first open call going, and want to go through hopefully through this session today. Everyone got a good understanding of what we're trying to do overall in the hub and how you can support and get involved. So really excited about this. As Dana says, I'm Director of Digital Supply Chain at Digital Catapult, and also the Program Director for the Hub. which is a 25 million Made Smarter innovation program. And I'm going to talk through a short overview of what the program is about, where we see the open calls that we're talking about today fitting into the overall program, and how we see that developing across the basically the 3.5 years of the program that we're running through to March 2025. So our overall vision is to transform UK manufacturing through digitally empowered supply chains that are more efficient, resilient, and sustainable. And those words, efficient, resilient, and sustainable, will come up as we talk about the challenges we've defined and the things that we want you to address in this first open call as I go through the presentation. Not only that, as part of the hub, we also want to develop and empower a globally competitive digital supply chain innovation ecosystem, working together to unlock the opportunities facing UK manufacturing. Our overall aims and objectives are quite ambitious. We're wanting to really be able to make an impact on CO2 and waste on UK supply chains. We want to improve visibility and reduce and greater resilience within supply chains. And as we all know, resilience has been a big issue over the last few years. But enabling that, we want to also really accelerate digital solutions and get more digital solutions available to more companies, and also build more digital skills and capabilities within UK manufacturing. So how are we going to do that? Well, to start off with, as I mentioned, we have got a program which is running over the next 3.5 years. We have a 10 million grant from Made Smarter Innovation, supported by some 15 million of funding from industry, which we see as critically important in supporting this challenge. And we're really looking to sort of focus and prioritize on these 7 supply chain challenges that we've identified with our industry advisors, as priorities for UK supply chains. So firstly, improving supply chain collaboration and governance, and you'll see that coming out in our open calls. Really building end-to-end supply chain visibility right from tier N, as we call it, right up the supply chain, all the way down to the customer and the consumer. Improving supply chain risk and resilience, getting better balance between supply and demand, really addressing the net zero and sustainability challenge that supply chains have, and then often improving the sort of areas like supply chain finance and logistics miles, so reducing the amount of logistics traffic on the roads, making them more efficient, and making supply chains more efficient through the working capital inventory agenda. And as I mentioned, we're tackling the end-to-end supply chain. And the ecosystem we're building really consists of both large and small industry, particularly in the manufacturing sector, but that's quite broad. We cover everything from healthcare and pharmaceuticals, right the way through to aerospace and defense. We're really wanting to get to work with the tech startup community, bringing their technical innovations that they have, particularly in digital and digital supply chain areas, into addressing the challenges that we have. And a really important part of our first set of open calls is working with academics, universities and research centres to get their insights and knowledge around some of the thorny questions we have around supply chains. So what do we mean by resilience? How do we better govern supply chains? And those sorts of things. And then, obviously, as we move forward, we're going to link closely with finance and investors to support our tech startup community. We've got a great range of big tech providers involved. In fact, I'm talking to Salesforce a bit later today. We've got Microsoft. We've got many of the hyperscalers involved in enabling this and helping us in this challenge. And then we're using industry bodies as a way of really accessing and growing the ecosystem and addressing the real industry problems that exist. So that's our sort of network of stakeholders we're building. We're doing that through developing a governance structure and an ecosystem. We have an industry advisory group, which is supporting us in defining the challenges and prioritizing the challenges for industry that we should be addressing. We have an academic network, which is being led by Ying Zi from Anglia Ruskin, and she is supporting us in helping access the academic world. And obviously we've had an initial workshop in the academic space. And then we've got a strategic advisory board, which is helping us on the overall strategy and direction for the hub. Supporting that, we have what we're calling our virtual hub, which is starts off as a virtual website or version 1 of the hub, which really sort of provides us an information source for everything about what we're doing in the hub. But over time, we're going to build it out into a real capability to support the digital transformation for organizations, whether that be a small industrial player right the way through to a large tech player. And that's going to consist of a number of elements. Firstly, we're going to have a repository of really interesting content around digital and what digital supply chains are all about, how digital supply chains are being transformed and developed, and the capabilities to support that. We're going to use it as a means of showcasing some of the projects we're doing. We're going to be using it as a place for organizations to network, so they're being able to link from industry across to maybe solution providers in the tech world, or for universities to link on digital supply chain topics into industry as well. And then finally, we're going to use it, hopefully over time, to build out some demonstrators and some experimentation areas where businesses can come and really learn, test with some of their own data, some of the solutions that we are developing in the Digital Supply Chain Innovation Hub. Then on the delivery side, we're running a series of projects which we're working with large organizations and smaller organizations to support the transformation of supply chains through digital. First of all, we have a series of flagship projects, of which 4 are going live at the moment. The first of those, Differentiator, is focused on the healthcare supply chain, looking at a digital twin of the clinical trial supply chain. The second, Connected Tempest, is focused on data sharing in the defense aerospace area with a new program called Tempest. And that's involving some large corporates like Rolls-Royce and BAE Systems. We then have a program being run by Digital Catapult called Logistics Living Lab, which is really looking at the whole ability to provide a digital platform to support collaborative logistics in both the last mile and the middle mile supply chain for logistics. And finally, we have a program which we're just launching called Supply Chain Labs, or Future of Supply Chain Labs. And that's really focused on a sort of an opportunity for small industry and large industry to learn about the opportunities in digital and how they could potentially help their business through short workshops, 1 to 2 day workshops, working with industry and technology players. Then we have the open calls as part of our flexible fund, and we have some 4 million of funding to offer in this area. And our first calls are the first part of that. We'll be running further calls over the next 3 years, starting in the autumn and then running through into 23 and 24, where we're really looking to accelerate digital innovation and address the challenges that we've identified through these open calls. And Ben will obviously talk a little bit more about the first open call shortly, and then we'll obviously follow up with further discussions around the other potential projects, either larger end-to-end programs or point solutions as we move through. Finally, from that, we're building out, we hope, a series of living labs across the UK, where we can really show, using real data, how these technical solutions are impacting and improving supply chains that we're developing. And so those are a really important part of making the hub a real living environment where we're creating digital transformation for organizations. So the program's funded by Innovate UK through the Made Smarter Challenge. Our partners are the High Value Manufacturing Catapult, National Physics Laboratory, and TWI, the Welding Institute. And you know, we're already building out a significant set of partners, contributors, and supporters. Yeah, some 60 plus organisations are already involved as we build out and grow the hub. So that I think hopefully gives you a good overview and summary of what we're trying to do. I'm now going to hand over to Dana, who's going to take us into the next section of the agenda. Thanks, Dana.
Thank you very much, Tim. I now like to introduce Ben Ramsden, Partnership Manager at Digital Catapult, will talk and present introduction to the challenges. Ben, over to you, if you can please join us on camera.
Thank you, Dana, and hello, everybody. Yeah, my name is Ben Ramsden, and I look after partnerships as part of the Digital Supply Chain Hub. And here to talk to you about the challenges today for the program that we're putting together on this first round of open calls, which we're very excited that we've got such a large group and a robust kind of diversity of participants who've started to apply for the program so far. So we hope it's going to be, we're going to be able to unearth some really exciting and dynamic new approaches to some of these challenges that we face in supply chain that Tim introduced earlier. So within this call, what we're looking at is collectively how we can start to kind of begin to embrace opportunities to overcome some of these challenges that are on the screen now. All of them are obviously interdependent. So none of them are looked at in a kind of a microcosm, but and these will all fold up and feed up into a broader portfolio of solutions that we're going to be developing and scaling as the program moves forward. So one of the key things here is that we want to explore how these solutions can work together to move the market forward. But in essence, the way we're breaking this down is going into a bit more detail into the specifics of the challenges that have been set down by industry. Each of the challenges are going to be sponsored by some leading manufacturers or supply chain companies in the UK. And they'll be providing data, information, use cases, and insight on previous work that they've done to date that will help shape the work that the successful parties will be able to do. So first off, as we've heard already, we're talking about supply chain resilience. And within the context of resilience, I mean, the top line here really is how we're measuring resilience. It's a word that we hear about a great deal, but what actually is it? I mean, people define it as the ability of a supply chain to return to normal operating performance within an acceptable time after being disturbed. But was that normal operating system, was that actually resilient in the first place? So we want to have a better understanding and a clearer definition of resilience across supply chains. And this really is not just about the definition of resilience, but also how do we create a framework and a tool set, which I'll come on to later in terms of the outcomes, that we can use to move forward and apply to the other programs that we're working on in the program. Then secondly, we want to be understanding the role of governance and trust. And this is within the broader area that we're exploring around supply chain collaboration. In order for supply chains to become resilient and actually to deliver on all of the other 5 components, we need to create an environment within which companies feel confident and comfortable to be able to collaborate. And there are many collaboration tools out there in the market. But what creates that trusted environment? There are technological solutions where you don't need trust because of the immutability and the veracity of the claims that are made. But we're talking here more about the socio-technical challenges of different businesses working together, different alignment of incentives, and this to enable collaboration. Traditionally, this is based on a principle that traditionally in supply chains, much of the activity has been on a company optimizing their own processes, optimizing their node level business efficiency. And whereas that has worked in the past, you've been able to generate some incremental gains of, single digit gains on an annual basis. The real prize is end-to-end network optimization, where we move towards double-digit efficiency gains, is the ambition. And so this requires a new approach to collaboration, a new approach to relationships, information sharing, and so on. And that is underpinned by a new mindset, which will see a shift from node-level optimization to network optimization. And we see this often, collaboration happening now on an individual basis, but on a corporate level across supply chains. What is the appropriate way that we can best establish a governance framework? What is that governance framework, and how can we better understand the principles around data ownership, commercial rights, and all of the myriad of super complex, highly private data that companies do not want to see shared or lose control of? So to that end, we want to understand within this challenge area, how do we create the appropriate environment for effective governance of distributed collaboration? And what is the role of technology in enabling that? And I'll come on in a second to talk a little bit more about the specific outcomes. But those two challenges there are research challenges. The outcomes I'll touch on in a second. We'll dig into more detail. But in essence, what we're looking at is we want to understand the framing of those two specific areas in relation to building consensus across the definitions of them and creating a framework which we can then deploy for other pieces of work that we have ongoing or developing in the future. So those two research challenges then look at beyond that, we now want to be also developing at the same time some technical solutions. And the first one, really similar to kind of creating a collaboration environment and the appropriate governance of that environment, foundational capabilities, really understanding how to create a high-level systems map of the supply chain. So what are the supply chain's boundaries? Who are the participants within that supply chain? And enable that to be, that visibility to be provided to people with the right permissioning in line with the appropriate governance that is established. But the technical challenge within that is, how do we map out a supply chain from existing data? And there are already existing pieces of work that we've seen in the market where companies are mapping out supply chains using bill of materials data, combining that with publicly available data sets and so on, to be able to build out a hypothetical supply chain map. And this is what we want to see people being able to deliver in this program. There are specific industrial use cases we're going to be exploring. One that, so specifically around aerospace is one of the key areas that we're going to be looking for people to focus on within this. And through that, it will probably extend into beyond the UK boundaries in order to be able to map out that supply chain. And we'll be specifically looking at two parts rather than, or a small amount of parts rather than the whole complex product that is being developed, with the objective of kind of building out that network visibility, and which could then be validated by the participants within the chain at a later, as part of once the technology has been able to deliver that solution. So we're really looking for people that need to be nudged in this direction. So they have an offer which is close to delivering this capability, or is delivering this capability already in another domain for a different type of product, but then can be nudged by receiving the funding from us to deliver a full supply chain map based on the bill of materials and potentially SKU data or other supporting data to map out that end-to-end chain, a hypothetical map with a high level of confidence. Then we want to be looking at sustainability across the supply chain. And as we all know, sustainability is an extremely broad topic, and still remains fairly subjective to many people. And it's obviously our work is not to is to move towards objective data collection and objective data management around very specific metrics that are defined by industry and other stakeholders around how we deliver a sustainable value chain systems that are regenerative rather than extractive. But where we want to get to within this project is to keep focused on what we believe is the first step of a long journey and very impactful journey around sustainability, that we want to be focusing on Scope 3 emissions measurement across the end-to-end chain. And within Scope 3, because it's still a very broad approach, we want to be specifically looking at upstream and downstream logistics within the kind of overarching area that Scope 3 covers. We're going to be mapping this against we want to be using the greenhouse gas protocol as the overarching framework for Scope 3 measurement in terms of the methodology and the metrics, and laddering up into the broader WBCSD and other initiatives that are very active in this space. The key bit that we want to be focusing on really is not so much the methodologies that are being developed by other people, so we want to be leveraging their work, but the bit that we want to focus on here is really how do we have an objective method for collecting and sharing data to create Scope 3 emissions maps with that focus on up and downstream logistics processes. So within this, the underlying principle here is my Scope 1 and 2 is your Scope 3. I'm not going to go into what scopes are, but in essence, the key is that the participating companies within this program will be generating or would need to be able to provide the technology company a set of data, which that company can then turn into a meaningful Scope 1 and 2 assessment, which would then be able to populate up into creating a searchable supply chain or Scope 3 emissions map from the existing participants who all in some way, shape or form are collaborating at the moment. So they have very interoperable solution. Well, sorry, not interoperable, but their business model, the data that they'll be generating will align to my Scope 1 and 2 is your Scope 3. And so the technology solution partner needs to be able to create the technology that is able to collect the data, Scope 1 and 2, provide the appropriate analysis, and then be able to ladder that up into creating a Scope 3 kind of assessment of an end-to-end chain. And then finally, we're looking at supply-demand imbalances. We've all seen, and this relates very much to the resilience challenge, we've all seen shocks across supply chains, whether it's the war, the pandemic, the global economy slowdown. These are obviously significant challenges, but in light of climate change and what's to come, these are important things for us to start to get the systems and solutions in place so that we can actually have more resilient supply chains. And an underpinning capability within this is around the need to better sense demand and supply. We've seen a lot of solutions on the market for demand sensing, whether that's integrating into publicly or analyzing publicly available or paid for data sets and deriving from that the kind of trends of consumers, or integrating directly into point of sale solutions, which will help reduce the bullwhip effect across the chain and better enable inventory management. But then due to other resource scarcity challenges that we've seen, whether it's CO2 or the challenges I mentioned before, we're starting to see build-up of inventory, whether it's livestock or actual products, which means that there is often that there is a waste in the supply chain, or excess inventory in the case of animals, which can result in mass kind of slaughter and or kind of the discarding of animals, which generate an enormous kind of environmental and animal welfare waste. So what we want to be doing is using technology based on data from within the supply chains, developing a solution that or not developing, but helping an existing solution to further develop, to be able to then provide a very clear insight back to the data providers around first demand senses, so what they're seeing from demand side, but then also being able to understand the impact of potential supply blockages in their supply chain, understand the potential risk of black swan events if possible, and then crucially provide a much more effective approach to supply chain planning, inventory management, and so on. The key metrics here is about reducing, or as close as possible to removing, waste across the supply chain, whilst maximizing on-shelf or in-store or at-service availability. So in this world of the need for greater resilience and sustainability, at the same time as reduction of waste and efficiency, we see this supply-demand balancing capability is a key area, so that we can transition towards a resilient system whilst maintaining as many principles around effective inventory management, just-in-time processes as is feasible. So that's the overview of the challenges. As you'll see, they all kind of interrelate, and there are a great deal of synergies between them all, and they will all feed into the broader program that we're going to be developing in further calls. As Tim said, this is the first 5. There are going to be many more coming after that. And so then moving forward then into the next slide, where we're then looking at the outcomes. So again, looking at the outcomes, we have, in terms of research, the first 2, resilience and governance. This isn't about writing another report. This isn't about doing a long complex academic piece of work, whereas that's super important. For our purposes, what we want is a concept framework and a clear definition of what these things are, resilience and governance, which then can develop further into a framework for creating a digital tool or suite of digital tools. So this is really about getting people aligned on the core definitions and almost like a roadmap of what needs to happen next. On resilience, we also want to be able to see how these digital tools and some examples of how digital tools can be used for measuring and improving resilience of supply chains, obviously based on the requirements of being able to map the supply chain, have appropriate levels of visibility around the data and so on. But based on those, the assumption that these capabilities are going to be developed, the specific bit that we want to understand on is the definition of resilience and the framework around how that might be able to evolve into a broader suite of capabilities that either exist in the market and can be brought together around the resilience topic, or could be developed further, or they may already exist in another context and need nudging into the supply chain context. So that's really what we want on the resilience piece. And similarly with governance, governance is is often it's very rarely the reason why people want to begin pieces of work, but it's often the reason why they will fail, especially within the complex world of digital supply chains. So we want to understand, again, what's that definition? and what's the framework that we want to be engaging around, and then how can we better use technology to improve and enable supply chain governance, and what also should be the governance of that technology. Supply chains in many cases are often all about power. And so we need to understand not only governance dynamics across the supply chain, but the governance dynamics between the supply chain and the technology providers and the people who would then be able to get visibility of that data and what that means for the changing dynamics across supply chains, to move towards back to that vision around creating a resilient, efficient and sustainable supply chain ecosystem, both within the UK and beyond. So that's the focus on the research pieces. Obviously, that's very much open to academics or private researchers or consultants or anybody really who believes that they have a good case to put forward about why they specifically have the experience to work in the space, the capabilities to create the frameworks, and will be able to be abreast of all of the key issues that are so salient to supply chains within these two topics. Beyond that then, in terms of the technology solutions, as mentioned, this is really moving. This is not about prototypes. This is about proof of value. We want to be able to derive how the deployment of these solutions and how the meeting of the brief as laid down by the challenge owners is proving how value can be generated from this area. So how are we going to be able to generate value from mapping an end-to-end supply chain system for one of the UK's leading industrialists? And how can that map be validated with data from industry? And we want it to be a working demonstration. So seeing how the automation and the mapping works, the results of all of the technology solutions will need to be kept within the terms of the NDA, because in some cases, fairly sensitive data is going to be provided. So that the outcomes will need to be maintained within that context, but the proof of value will be shared, and the kind of the results of the program. In some cases, it's not always going to be successful, but in every case, we want to make sure we're doing everything we can to be as successful as possible and generating and sharing learnings from what went wrong and what went right. Same with Scope 3. As mentioned, we want to be aligning this to the overarching frameworks for the WBCSD, the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, and other initiatives out there, and pulling data from the supply chain partners to be able to provide those Scope 1 and 2 emissions and build out that map of up and downstream emissions within the logistics processes. And again, this is another working demonstration. We don't want people to be coming to us with any of these challenges really with a concept or an early stage idea on a low TRL level. This needs to be proven examples of how you've done this before, and will be able to deliver on a proof of value in the timeline provided. Likewise, with supply and demand sensing, this is going to be pulling data from within the supply chain, but also you're going to need to be able to have access to metadata already around the supply chain, have capabilities in this area, and use the funding to nudge and improve your existing solution so that it can help to deliver the value that's required. We want to, as mentioned, we really want to be focusing on the value of reducing waste, improving availability, and this should be, we believe, significantly more impactful than traditional planning techniques. And it's that movement from a node level to a network level supply and demand sensing that we believe will be able to deliver significant value for all stakeholders. So that's a general overview of the challenges that we're looking at, the breakdown between research and opportunities, and technology, and the underpinning principles that from research, we want a framework that's going to help move the needle further forward in terms of practical development of technical solutions to deliver resilience and governance. And from a technology community, we want to move the needle in terms of getting you guys to repurpose existing solutions or advance current solutions that you're deployed within this context so that we move faster, more quickly access real data and start to build out the foundations of what we believe will become a world-class and transformational portfolio of digital solutions, which we will be able to help connect industry to and enable this vision that Tim talked about earlier. Smarter, supply chain smarter together, and using these digital solutions as the launch pad of some of that work. So that's that, and we'll be answering questions on this shortly.
Thank you very much, Ben. That was very useful, and we are quickly going to now the section of how to get involved in the first round of open calls and overview of the program by Jasmine Kailath, Innovation Delivery Manager at Digital Catapult. Jasmine, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Dana, for the introduction. I'm very excited to be here and tell you a little about the program, the Digital Supply Chain Hub program. And as Tim and Ben mentioned, this is the first round of open calls for the Digital Supply Chain Hub, and we are very excited that you're all here. So after you have heard about our 5 very exciting supply chain challenges and what we expect as an outcome, let me tell you what is in for you and what are the next upcoming steps. So as mentioned, there are 2 research challenges and 3 tech solution challenges. So once you are selected, you will have 4 months from mid-August to mid-December to develop a proof of value or a concept framework. Besides the regular interactions with the Digital Catapult team, industry experts, and corporate partners to iterate and accelerate your supply chain solution or research, you will have either a 40K or 80K as a grant funding. And in order for you to get access to these great benefits, you need to get through our selection process. So we have a first round of review with our internal technologists and business experts, and then the shortlisted ones will be reviewed by our industry sponsors, which you can find on our website. And then after a deliberation session to confirm the cohort of 5 participants, you will get the outcome by the beginning of August. So we will have 1 participant per challenge. So now let's have a look at the timeline. Here you can see key dates, which you can mark in your calendars already. So for now, you're here at the correct time to learn about what we're going to do. So currently the open call is live, and the application deadline is the 3rd of July. In July, we will have the selection process, which I just explained. And then in August, we'll have the onboarding. Specifically on the 15th of August, we'll have the onboarding session. And later on in August or September, but between August and September, we'll have the challenge alignment workshops together with the technologists, the Digital Catapult technologists and the industry sponsors. And then you have time until the 15th of December to develop your proof of value or research development phase. And in between, we will have monitoring sessions together with a monitor officer and also the industry sponsor to just have regular checkups and meetups and help you develop your proof of value or research. And in the end, we will have a showcase event, which will most likely be in end of November, beginning of December. Let's dive deeper into what exactly is happening in these events. So we have the onboarding session, which you can already mark in your calendar, on the 15th of August, in which we introduce the different members of the Digital Catapult team, the industry sponsors, and basically explain the Made Smarter Innovation Digital Supply Chain Hub. What are we going to do? What's going to be the outcome of all this? And also how you are involved now. And we will also go through the key milestones you have to achieve and the key activities which you will have throughout the program, and also talk about the final event and what we expect from you. And then later we will have the challenge alignment workshops together with the industry sponsors, technologists, and the selected innovators to discuss the challenges and solutions more in detail, just to get an industry context and what exactly do we need, what exactly will you receive as data, and how you can work with it. And then you have the time to work on your research and proof of value. In between, we will have regular meetups to assess the scope, progress, the project plan, the risks and issues, and everything around your research and proof of value, together with the industry sponsor and a digital Catapult project monitor. And in the end, we will have a showcase event to showcase your solutions, your outcomes, in a big pitching event, networking event, together with the stakeholders, which Tim has mentioned earlier, to show what we have done in the Digital Supply Chain Hub in the first round of open calls. So that's a brief overview of what we are going to do, what's going to happen once you got selected. But of course, before that, there's the call for action, which you have seen in all our slides. Apply at the Digital Supply Chain Hub website, and you have time until the 3rd of July to apply. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jasmine. Wonderful. Okay, so I think this is a good start for the Q&A session. And I'd like to invite Tim and Ben and Jasmine to be on camera and to join me when we respond to questions from the audience. I see that we have a few questions already. So first of all, this is a question, I believe, to Tim. When you talked about supply chain risk, does it consider also cyber risk relating to supply chain?
The simple answer is yes. With supply chain risk, we see any risk that can impact a supply chain, and as cyber can impact the technology that runs supply chains, then yeah, they have an impact on supply chains. So, but it's not one of those ones that, and we will be considering going forward how we want to deal with it, whether we take it as a major challenge or as a supporting one, because there are other programs running that support this in a more major way. So we will be looking at that going forward. But yeah, in summary, it is in scope.
Thank you, Tim. We have a few questions about the combination of research and industry. So I will now choose the questions for that. First of all, a question about, can universities lead any of the current open calls or future calls? So as we've seen on the slides and the presenters, yes. And this is the two open calls are suitable for research organizations, including universities. If Jasmine, if you want to add anything on that, please, yeah, feel free to do so.
I think it was pretty clear. Yes, universities can apply, and yeah, we're looking forward to your application.
Thank you. The next question about research and the technology solution calls, are the research and tech calls running in parallel or sequentially?
Yeah, they're running in parallel. So both calls are running in parallel. The application deadline for both calls are the 3rd of July, and all the dates mentioned are also the same, but you will have different timings, for example, for the challenge alignment workshops together with your specific industry sponsor. But the key dates are the same. Thank you.
This is another question relating to the mix or collaboration of industry and university. Does a project need industry and university collaborations? So I'm happy to start with this one. There is an option for two organizations to partner on one applications, but there needs to be a lead applicant.
And just, I could just add a point on that. I think we're not so concerned about the type of organization or the setup. Sorry, there's a fire. We're not so concerned about the type of organization or the setup of how those organizations are working. We're most focused on the capabilities of the team, the experience that people have, and the viability and excellence of their proposed solution. We're trying to look at this now from an open perspective. we know what the challenges are. We know what industry need. It's up to the market, basically you guys and others, to help come up with those solutions. So we're focusing on the outcomes. How you do it is up to you, as long as the outcome is excellent. It's the ambition.
Thank you. Another question that came in, can a team of academics across universities apply, or is it an individual application?
Yeah, again, I mean, I think you can come together to apply as long as there's one lead, as you said, Dana. Yeah, I think that's hopefully clear. We don't mind who's in the team. Yeah, there needs to be one lead organisation we contract with, though.
Thank you, Tim. The next question is, can we apply for more than one challenge? And if we do, will multiple applications assessed together or independently?
Yes, you can apply for more than one challenge, and it will be judged independently. But yes, you're very welcome to apply for more than one challenge.
Thank you. How far should we be in the development of our technology from TRL level? Is that so? That relates to the technology solution questions. Ben, would you like to take this one?
Sure, I can answer that. I mean, what we want to see, I mean, we don't have a very specific view on whether or not people should be at a certain level. What we want to see is, for these challenges, it's a higher TRL, but it's quite a broad range. It could be from 5 to 7 or even up towards 8, but probably more around 6 to 7 sort of area. But we really want to see this, the funding that we do, ensure that the outcome is a proof of value, where we can start to quantify, where not only does the technology work, but we can start to quantify how it could generate value for industry if scaled up. But we're not going to define very specific boundaries around this, because a big part of this work is to understand kind of where the market is beyond the kind of existing relationships that we have. It's not about being too prescriptive around what technology readiness level is. It's just our expectation is a proof of value. So that in some ways answers the same point. I don't know if anybody else has got any other points to add on that.
No, I think that's a fair summary. I think, as I say, we're looking for something which can be demonstrated to provide value to an industry sponsor, through the technical solution.
So, and if we're talking about the sponsors, there's a question: can you share the industry partner names for supply-demand imbalances challenge?
Yeah, so on that one, we're just finalising the sponsor, over the next week. So, apologise for that. We're hoping to have that in place sooner, but it's just taken a little bit longer than we thought with the final contracting of that. So we'll announce that on the website as soon as we have that finalised.
And just to build on that, it's one of the key things around this is going to be providing the access to real data. A question back to whoever asked that question, I guess, is does the domain is the domain important to you? What is it about who the challenge sponsor is that is interesting to you? And what that basically that's the question. Is it the domain based on existing data that you might have access to, or is it something else? But maybe give them a chance to answer that, and then we can carry on the other questions.
Yeah. There's another question. What does the application form look like? Who would own the IP?
Okay. Sure. So, do you want to pick that up, Jasmine? Or?
Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
So from a point of view of IP, then the way we approach this with all of our open calls is that the IP resides with the tech innovator. That's a very important part of what we think is the right way to do it in terms of digital catapult. But obviously then there's a discussion between yourselves, the tech innovator, and the industry potential sponsor or owner about the use of that IP in a particular application as it develops above TRL 7.8 into a fully used scenario. And the other part of the question, Dana, sorry, was?
The question is not
anymore about the sort of value of the challenge. So it's I think there's a question around it. Was basically there's a grant from the Made Smarter Innovation Fund of 80k or a grant of 40k for the research challenges. Yeah, and that's a grant. It's not available to the tech innovator. Or the researcher.
So part of the question was on the application form itself as well. Jasmine, if you want to add to that.
Exactly. So how does the application form look like? So you can apply, register your interest over the link, which we will share. And then you will receive a link to the submittable application form with all the application questions, and you have time you can save the application, take your time, ask questions to the email address we will share as well. So that's how you receive the application form.
Thank you. I see two further questions on the application form, so I'll combine that. In terms of reference to literature for the research challenge questions, the question is to add all the references that exceeds the word limit. What shall we do in that case?
Well, I don't think you need to add all the references. You can add as much as you can, prioritize on the importance of the reference to the challenge and your solution. And we will consider that you will have more references, but the most important ones are the ones we need.
And I think just to build on that, it's what we want to do is make sure that what is being developed is bringing together the work that's already been done so far, rather than trying to start afresh. We want to be building on considerable work that's been done by many of your peers to date, but crucially not to be creating another paper, whereas that can be done by, you can take the results of this, I'm sure, and turn it into some more academic research. But the crucial thing is that we have an overarching perspective of work that's already been done. We can create some common definitions to help frame things, and then crucially create this framework that enables us to move forward with tangible next steps into the next open calls that we're doing and the other programs that we're doing. So the goal is to move quickly to implementation from the definition phase that we're moving on those research pieces.
There's a follow-up question that relates to this for the research paper challenges, and that's the expected content of the proposal. The question is, how much should there be some concept in the proposal already?
Well, it's up to you how much you put in relation to the concept. But obviously with any proposal, the more that you can bring to life what you're potentially doing and how it might work, the more potential opportunity you'll score in relation to certainly from the technical side of it, what you're offering.
Another question is about the collaboration. What is the best way to collaborate on a technology challenge between a startup and a research institution? Should one lead and another come as a percentage owner?
Yeah, I think it needs to be decided between the parties as to who leads, but clearly we're looking for a technical solution. So in that challenge, so whoever's bringing the technical solution, would be the most likely person to sort of take the lead on that. But I mean, obviously, we're not defining who that is, between the parties, but they are technical solutions we're looking for there.
Thank you, Tim. There's another question here: how the international partners participated. For example, can they be included in the team?
I can take that. So we mostly look for the majority of the work has to be done in the UK, but as mentioned earlier, you can participate as a team, and part of the work can happen internationally, but we focus on the UK. So the majority of the work has to be delivered in the UK.
Thank you, Jasmine. It's a good time to ask. We want to refer you also to the terms and conditions that's on the website, and you can find a lot of information on the terms and conditions where these questions are addressed. There are a few questions about the grant funding, but also a question on the structure of the program. Is the funding grant funding or equity based? Is the challenge aimed to solve a specific problem for a specific sponsor company, or to enable us to create a wider, more impactful business? What is the right? Well, and we already covered the IP content.
Yeah, so I'll take that. So these challenges are what we're calling hub-defined challenges. In other words, we're looking at a solution that, although we will have industry sponsors, and in some cases there's more than one sponsor for the solution, for the particular tech solution, we want it to be applicable to wider industry. So hence the nature of the challenges have been defined in hopefully a broad enough way that they provide the tech company or the academic institution to develop a solution that's applicable not just to one company, but to a broader range of businesses within the supply chain. So in answer, this is not a specific challenge for a specific company. It is a challenge that we've defined in conjunction with a broad range of industry businesses. And we see this should be applicable to a wide range of businesses. In terms of data, the data may be coming from one or two organizations, who are specific sponsors, but we should use that as example data of how it could be applied more widely as well.
Thank you. There's another question. Are the awards allocated as grants for costs incurred, or are they fixed amount prizes? Do awardees need to submit claims against cost incurred, etc.? Jasmine, if would you like to answer this one?
Yeah, so they're fixed amount grants. However, we will have monitoring sessions and reports where we need to have an overview of how you spend the money and what the money is used for, but that's all going to be done together with the monitoring officer throughout the program. So we will have reportings, midterm reports and final reports to see how you allocated the money.
Thank you. There's a question here: what the funding can be spent on? For example, hiring a research assistant, open access fee for the publication, or travel related to the research.
This is not specified yet, but together with the once the onboarding is happening and we sit together with you, going through the key milestones, what you have to achieve, we will go through that in specific, but there's no specific categories as yet.
Thank you. I'm going to take a few more general questions, and then we're going to focus on each challenge because I see some questions are coming for each challenge as well. How many projects will be funded in each call, tech and research?
There's going to be one project funded per challenge. So we have 5 challenges, we'll have 5 participants.
Thank you. Another question is regarding the industry partners, sponsors, about relevant external data. We've talked about the data in the past, in previous, a few minutes ago, but just to answer this one specifically, the specific relevant external data and drivers may be different for different domains.
As a follow-up to your question, Ben, right?
Yeah. So absolutely. So before the call is finalized, we'll be able to explain the domain. So absolutely. So that'll be required. We are looking at FMCG within the context of that challenge. So what we are looking at within the supply demand challenge is kind of a two-level piece. One is the technical capability to be able to deliver on the spec, but then also access to metadata specific to that domain. And it may be that some of the funding could be used to access that, or that you already have access to that data. Again, the main thing is what we care most about is the outcome, and that it delivers value as defined by industry during the program. But how you get there, that's really up to you guys.
Thank you. We've received 2 questions so I'll read them both, but I think some of this is partly covered, but we just want to make sure that it's all covered. Usually in UKRI grants, universities is limited to a maximum of 80% of the funding received. Is this the same case for this project? The second question from the same person is, does the funding cover only the direct costs, for example, salaries, or everything, including indirect and estate costs?
So to the first questions, we follow the standard UKRI grants approach for academics, where 80% is full economic costs are grant funded and 20% is the match contribution. So the maximum grant funding will be up to 40K, which means the full economic cost could be up to 50K to deliver the challenge scope. That's to the first question. And to the second one, as mentioned, we will discuss how you spent the grant with the monitoring officer once you are onboarded, when we discuss also the key milestones.
Thank you. A follow-up question is, if we are collaborating, the 80,000 pot would be split across the partners, and the particular split would be up to the lead partner. That's under the collaboration between different partners.
So the grant, the maximum grant available for all partners is 80K. Obviously, you can provide an in-kind contribution or any other means of contributing over and above that through whoever you're partnering with to the full value of the project you're delivering on. Yeah, and we would encourage you to do that in the best way that you can. But the grant available for the tech challenge is 80K.
Thank you. Another question that just came in, well, two more questions that came in about this, the funding part. Are there any state aid de minimis restrictions?
Yes, to follow the state aid rules as it's funding through Innovate UK. And so depending on whether you've received any grant in whatever the period is previously, then we need to follow those rules. Yeah.
Thank you. I'd like to now go to the specific questions on challenges. For the automated mapping proof of value, should the focus be on the value that could be gained from having this automated capability in place?
Yeah, so maybe I'll pick up a bit more on that one. So what the industry sponsor will provide is they'll provide bill of material data, yeah, and any associated data that they can around the particular component that we're looking at. in the aerospace sector. And then the technology company, we're asking to basically, come up with a technical solution to support the mapping of the nodes and the links between the nodes of those potential components that sit in that bill of materials supply chains. Yeah, it won't be too big a part, as Ben said. Yeah, we'll define that with the industry sponsor, and then in terms of the value, obviously that's for the tech solution provider to assess with the industry sponsor the value that's coming out of that exercise, yeah, to the industry sponsor. Yeah, so we'd expect some collaboration around that, yeah, and obviously some support in the sorts of areas where they would, that particular solution is driving value.
There's a more general question about data. Any idea on what type of data would be available for a project? Obviously, that's quite a general question, but if you'd like Tim to.
Yeah, Ben, maybe you pick that up.
So sorry, the provision of data.
Yeah, what type of data? I mean, it'll depend on the project, clearly. Yeah, what type of data? So, I've talked about the data sort of data that will be available for the mapping project. We would envisage for the demand and supply sensing project for the tech company to have access to available data that in terms of demand, yeah, and available data in terms of supply from the industry company. But we would expect also for the tech provider to find other data sources, yeah, that would improve the quality of both the supply and the demand signal in that case, yeah, and that's what Ben alluded to earlier. Other external data, and that could be, a range of things, yeah, need to be more closely defined with the industry in discussions with ourselves and industry sponsor. In relation to the scope 3, I think Ben, you pick that up because I think you provide a bit more detail.
Yeah, so thank you, Tim. So in terms of the scope 3 emissions data, that's going to be the companies providing the data they currently have in relation to their scopes 1 and 2. And the performance of the functions that align to the kind of objective of up and downstream emissions and up and downstream logistics processes. So it's basically providing a mechanism for companies to provide that data, then the ability to analyze that data sufficiently to then be able to create a map of the scope 3 emissions between interconnected companies. So it's basically scope 1 and 2 data, and then the ability to build a link between those scopes 1 and 2 to be able to create a scope 3 map. We're aiming for as much primary data as possible, but there's always going to be gaps in that data. So the ability to fill in any gaps in a similar way with the supply demand sensing data, or to add richness to the existing data set to provide a better, more holistic view, is always going to be useful. But yeah, the primary thing is, the primary capability is about being able to analyze the existing scope 1 and 2 data that they have, that's primary data, as much as possible. And then secondly, to be able to complement that with secondary data that can then build out that scope 3 map.
Okay. Thank you. There are 2 questions here on, I'll start first with is there any template for a development plan?
There is no template per se as such now, but we will work on this together if you're selected with the monitoring officer. So this is just for us to have an overview of what your plan is and what you currently have done. to just assess how far you are and then see how we can work together. But this is just a rough overview for us, and then based on that, we will work on this further.
The other question related to this is, what level of technical detail or consideration do you expect in a proof of value submission?
Who was okay? So what type of technical detail or consideration? I think again, this is more looking at business value. So we want to be understanding, well, technical here is more the business technical language, so that you're outlining what the proof is that we can demonstrate some value generated from the insight that is derived by the solution. So it's not so much about any technical specifics from a technology perspective. It's more looking at the business value specifics that we're going to be looking at unlocking from the solution. So it's connecting the work of the project, the results, and then to the actual value that can be generated from it.
Thank you, Ben. There's a question here on the sectors. The supply-demand call can be executed very differently depending on the sector. And the big differentiator being is the sector made to order, where focus is mainly on supply, or made to stock, FMCG, etc., where the focus is mainly on demand. So the question is, will the focus be determined based on the industry sponsor for this challenge?
Yeah, as Ben said, I think we're already focusing down on FMCG more in relation to this challenge, where we would envisage mainly being make to stock, but could also be some make to order. So that varies as well, depending on the business. Yeah. So I think in terms of responding to this challenge, yeah, I would consider as we talked about, the sort of inventory scenario, make to stock scenario as the primary one. Yeah. But clearly, in some supply chains, particularly short shelf life supply chains, you can't really hold a lot of inventory. So I think that this is all relevant for the demand and supply sensing aspect.
Thank you. There's one question here on the automated supply chain mapping challenge. Will the challenge be assessed on the proposed solution's accuracy against the actual supply chain data provided by the sponsor? For example,
yeah, I mean,
accuracy possible.
Yeah, so I suppose the answer simply would be nice to say yes, but I don't think it'll be that straightforward, right? Because I doubt the sponsor will have necessarily all of that insight and information. Yeah, I think it's a combination. Clearly we want to get to the point where we've got a reasonably accurate solution, but also a solution which is robust, automated, and is using data that can be replicated. Yeah, we know it's unlikely to get to a point where this will be 100% accurate. Yeah, but clearly this is about getting to a solution that's revealing the best accuracy. Yeah, that can be achieved. Yeah, without necessarily having to do a lot of the manual work that requires to manually map, phone up, discuss and assess what's going on up supply chains. Yeah.
Thank you, Tim. There's a question here about the research challenges. Is the hub looking for groundbreaking ideas or simpler solutions?
I think the key thing here is we want to have groundbreaking ideas that can be practically deployed. So there's a balance between the two. The key thing in many cases, the hypothesis that we're working to is that the technical solutions need nudging. The deployment within the supply chain, generation of real data and delivery of real impact is where the challenge is, and that's really where we want to get to see. We don't want to be what we want to do is move to quick feedback loops of delivering impact in the real world, learning from them, moving forward. So rather than go on a big project, grand projet or whatever, where we're going to wait 3 or 4 years for the results, we want to be focused on quick programs, quick learnings, quick application of those learnings in an agile manner, which will help us deliver the transformational big system approach, but in manageable, meaningful chunks, so that we are delivering value quickly and for the duration of the program.
Thank you, Ben. I see another question, and I will then, if anyone has further questions, please let us know now, because we are conscious of time as well, of making sure that we want to cover every question possible this webinar. But if you have questions after this webinar, please do send it to our email address. One last question that I see here, can VAT be added onto the 50K or 80K?
We will have a look, and we will put this question on the FAQ, and we'll come back to you and answer the question by email.
But in essence, this is also that depends on the tax structure of the receiving organization or the tax kind of thing. So basically, we're providing that amount of money in cash, and it's up to the recipient to fulfill their accounting obligations. But yeah, that's the amount that we are going to be providing.
Thank you. Okay, if there's any further questions, please let us know. And I'd like to thank our presenters, our attendees, everyone who took part, worked diligently on this webinar and the hub. There are many wonderful people involved here, and it's a great opportunity to say thank you to everyone involved. Please register your interest at the link, as you can see on the presentation, and get in touch with us by email. We'll be happy to answer more questions.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Really looking forward to picking up with you as we go forward.
So thank you very much to you all, and have a good rest of the day.